Welcome to the JAMODI podcast. We are all surrounded by amazing coaches and leaders. So let's get an inside look at not just what they do, but how they do what they do. After all, becoming the best versions of ourselves is JAMODI, just a matter of doing it. Coaches, the JAMODI podcast is powered by Shoot 360. The future of basketball has arrived in Dallas-Fort Worth. Shoot 360 combines the latest sports technology with the fundamentals of basketball skill development. The result is a one-of-a-kind video game-like basketball program designed to improve your shooting, dribbling, and passing. Visit shoot360dfw.com to learn more and register for your free 1-hour workout evaluation. Shoot 360, the future of basketball is here. You've mentioned that a couple of times about non-verbally doing things as well. You find it really important not just to be saying things, but with your non-verbal. And obviously, you can say something, but if your facial expressions, or your tone, tone is nonverbal. It can really ruin the message you're trying to convey. But you're talking about physically, fist bumps, some type of, what is the connection that you see there with maybe getting your point across even more, getting them on board more?
Well, I think first of all, there's eye contact and physical touch are two incredible ways to connect with people. And it's got to be done appropriately. It certainly can't be overdone, like all the time. Every time somebody does something, they're getting, I'm not a big believer in that. I like to be very specific with what I'm praising for, something that has happened that, maybe there's growth in an area that there was struggling before, or maybe there's a really big play that was made, or an extra effort. You can just see the effort level was so elite. So I like to recognize that. And again, eye contact, physical touch, I think are two great ways of connecting with people. I know for me, when someone talks to me and they make eye contact, or maybe as a player, I can still remember a coach maybe, again, just kind of touching me on the shoulder or giving me a little, they might just give me a little playful elbow, on the side, or maybe a little fake punch to like in the rib. They go, "What, man, that's a hit right there." And I don't do that with our women. But the point is,
good call. Yeah.
Yeah, it was interpreted by me as a very positive, it was positive reinforcement. It was recognition of my worth and value. I know my self-image went up when those things happened for me. So I think, again, that's so much a part of what we're doing as teachers and coaches, Matt, is we're building self-worth and self-esteem and the self-image of the athlete. Again, I've always been a big believer that as someone's self-image improves, so does their performance. I don't care what it is. Again, we can go across the board. A concert pianist, studio musician, a classroom teacher, a baseball player, any athlete, a business person, a salesperson, a lawyer, a doctor. If their self-esteem and self-image rises, I think their performance rises. So that's one of the things you try to build, but you have to do it realistically. Again, it can't be smoke and mirrors and just a fake.
Yeah, they'll see through that.
Authenticity to it. Yeah. So those are things, yes, Matt, to your question, the nonverbal part of communication to me is so important, and as important, if not more so, than the verbal communication. Because again, what I say is one thing, what I do is another. And if players can pick up the energy and the reinforcement that they're getting from my words, I think it whatever I'm teaching becomes that much more powerful.
I think early on, I really wanted players to feel like or think that I had all the answers. Like I wanted to be a really good coach, and really good coaches aren't tested by their players, and they're not they always have the right answers. And I think the two things came to my mind with a lot of things you said is, one, we need to have humility and realize that we don't know everything. And then also be careful of taking ourselves too seriously. Even though it's important what we're doing. The passion that you have for it after 41 years, man, it comes through the screen, when you're talking. But the idea that we can't make mistakes, and we're so worried about the way that we're perceived by our peers as coaches or our players, man, we can't take I just took myself too serious for too many years, where I didn't allow myself to be playful with players.
Yeah.
I didn't even want, because Coach Bliss, my college coach, he wasn't playful. And so I thought that's what serious coaching is. And I think the longer that I do it, obviously I haven't done very long, but getting to talk with enough coaches that kind of say similar things, or kind of all floating down a similar stream, like you start to see, like, golly, there's something to this, where I want to keep my humility, realizing I can make mistakes, and my players need to know that. And then also not take myself too serious, no matter how big time at a small private school I get.
Yes, no question. Well, one of the best, and I love the word humility, and I think sometimes people can get that a little mixed up too. One of the best definitions I've ever heard of that, Matt, was true humility is not thinking less of yourself, it's thinking of yourself less. And one of the things that humility, it's like a roadmap that leads me to that phrase that I used a little earlier, is servant leadership.
Yeah.
True servants are humble. They're not necessarily meek and mild-mannered, or they're certainly not doormats, but there's a humility about them to know that they don't know it all. They don't know it all. Again, great Coach Wood, when you're through learning, you're through. And Pat used to tell us, Coach Summit used to tell us weekly, guys, we never arrive in this game. You never arrive. There's always more to learn. There's always more room for growth. There's room for improvement. We got to continue to seek ways to do it better. Pat was never afraid to blow something up. We may have won a national championship, and she'd say, we got to look at what we're doing here. It's not very good. And the temptation is to say, well, Pat, we just won a national championship. Well, yeah, we did, but maybe that won't get us there this next season, So I think having a humility about yourself to know that you don't know it all, nor will you ever know it all, but you're going to continue to learn. You're going to be a lifelong learner. And I think, again, players, one of the things, again, the most powerful tool a teacher has is their own example. Hands down. If I know nothing else, Matt, in the next whatever time we're going to spend together, I know this with certainty. The most powerful weapon a teacher has is their own example. So when your players see you and our players see us being humble and admitting something that maybe we don't know what we don't know, but we'll get the answer, and saying that, we don't know it all, and we're going to continue to be learners. We're still studying in the off season. I went somewhere to learn. I'm learning from this person. We brought this person in to learn from. I think players respect that. And I think that encourages them to be along that same path as well. So I think that's a very important piece, is being humble. And again, knowing that we don't know it all. And, another word that comes to mind in this area of the conversation is being vulnerable.
Yeah.
I think leaders, one of the real deficiencies in leaders, and again, there's a fine line, there's a balance. I don't want to say, you don't want some leader that's up there and they're going to fall apart every time they get up to the podium. And
he cries every time he talks to us.
Yeah, it's happened to me, and I'm no, of course. But allowing people to see, being vulnerable enough that people see your mistakes, and then you, A, being accountable, B, taking ownership, and then C, correcting those mistakes. I'll never forget I was a head coach at Northwood University. I think it was in my third year. And I remember after a game one time saying, guys, I hurt us in that game. I wasn't good in the last minutes. And that's on, I think you guys won the game, and I think I helped lose it. And I apologize. And I'll never forget those guys. They just, no. And then they started, that turnover, and, with 11 minutes left, we turned the ball over 2 times in a row and we missed 2 late. they will rush to your defense more often than not when you're and again, it's got to be done authentically. You can't be contrived or made up but when a leader,
it's hard to plan. It's hard to plan vulnerability.
Yes. Yes. But I think when they see that, Matt, my point is when they see true humility, when they see vulnerability, but they also see strength to own it, to be accountable and to own it also takes strength and courage. And whether or not they're emotionally mature enough to grasp all that, they respect it. They respect when somebody in authority owns up. I mean, look at our world today. Do we see that on a high level in our leadership in our country or anywhere else? Right? No, we rarely see that anymore.
Yeah. Deflect.
Oh my gosh, we can't point fingers and create blame fast enough. So when that happens, I really believe that people who are invested in an endeavor, whatever it may be, in our case, it's a basketball team, but whether I've read so many things in military leadership and things. And one of the things, Extreme Ownership is a book that comes to mind. And Jocko Willink and Lee Saban are phenomenal. And one of the things they continually talk about, I love that example where Jocko Willink says there was a training exercise and things went really drastically wrong. So they're doing the after action report. And so he's got all of his squad leaders and platoon leaders in there. And he's saying, okay, this happened. Whose fault was that? And one by one, these platoon leaders are all taking, our guy screwed up here. I screwed up here. I gave a bad call. And he'd say, okay, whose fault is it? Nope, wrong. Okay, whose fault is that? Nope, wrong. And at the end, you know whose fault it is, guys? It's my fault because I was in charge of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And it went to crap and I'm going to own it. And I can promise you it's not going to happen again. When that happens, your troops, your players, your people in the business sector, they are going to rally around you. Now, it can't happen every week or else you might be replaced.
My fault again, guys.
Yeah. Okay, guys, we're 4-16 and I've blown 12 of them. That can't happen. You're probably going to be working at the 7-Eleven before long on the, selling Frosty somewhere at Wendy's. But no, honestly, vulnerability, humility are huge components of leadership to me, Matt. And I'm glad you brought it up.
No, it's good. The idea, I think every coach will say this in some way throughout a season of, hey, it's not me versus you, fellas. Like ladies, it's us together, moving together forward. The words are nice, but they're going to know real quick whether or not we mean that by all of those things you've just talked about. We want them to really feel like it is us as a group, as a team, not, and because I've played for guys or been around guys where it's coach up here, we're down here, and we saw the difference. We felt it. And, but then you nailed it too. But also having self-awareness, I love that word that you brought up. At TJ Rosine at Emmanuel, I think one of the best culture guys, one of the best coaches out there, he said self-awareness is a superpower. Yep. Like to know when it's enough vulnerability, when it's enough, when we're on the same level enough, but then to still keep the line. We're not friends. We're not buddies.
That's right.
There's a line, but there's a difference between us. But I think that's where, and maybe it happens over time. Maybe it happens from listening to good people. But one of my players years ago said, Coach, I think you want us to be robots. And I said, what? What do you mean robots? Well, he said, well, you're a robot. I coached like one, no emotion, really just go, move, next thing, let's go next. And so that's what they were mimicking. I think I want them to have it's us together mentality, but understanding where that line is as well.
Absolutely. And that's the thing now, too. A lot of times people hear what we've been talking about in these last few minutes, and they'll think, oh, gosh, well, you're just going to be buddy with your players.
Yeah.
Not at all. And again, part of leadership, it's kind of like when someone's a tough guy. When someone's a real tough guy, they don't need to tell you. The real tough guys, because those aren't the guys that are necessarily loudest in the room or popping off, and it's just like a leader. When someone's in charge because they aren't afraid to hold people accountable. They aren't afraid to make decisions. Sometimes as a leader, the buck stops with you, as Harry Truman said years ago, the buck stops there. And you have to make hard decisions. And you're not afraid to do that. You're not afraid to hold people accountable. But at the same time, you're also not afraid to show reinforcement and reward things that are happening that are good, and stepping back sometimes and allowing other people, part of what good leaders do is they create leaders around them. I'll never forget, and I forget where I used this, I think in one of the press conferences last year when Coach Merchant had a medical issue that I had to be the interim head coach for the last 10 games of our season. And it was a press conference, and I forget the question that was asked that triggered this, but I always remembered watching this thing years ago, an NFL film things, and it was Bud Grant, the Minnesota Vikings, and Bud Grant said something to this effect. I'm going to paraphrase, but one of the signs of great leadership is when you can remove the leader and the ship still functions at a very high level. The team, the unit, whatever, it's still at a high level of efficiency if you temporarily remove the leader. And I think that is so important to understand. Yes, you have to set the tone. You have to be the keeper of the keys of the culture, so to speak. You're the guardian of the gate and guardian of the core values to making sure they're adhered to, they're followed, that they're not trampled on, that somebody that is violating a code or a standard is held accountable, and there are consequences. That's part of what we do as leaders. But at the same time, we also create a vision and we create hope. And what we try to do, I've always believed this, that on any good team, there comes a point in time where, figuratively speaking, the coach, the leader, he's at the helm, he's steering. There's a point when there's a tap on the shoulder, and the team captains or the team leaders or the veterans say, Coach, step aside for a minute. We got this. We're going to help steer the ship. Stay on board. Keep us abreast. Keep us following, the course, but let us steer. We're going to guide this thing for a little bit. That's very powerful. And once again, I think an insecure leader, someone who's unwilling or afraid to be vulnerable, I think that's a fearful picture for them. I think for a secure leader, that's what we want.
Yeah.
We want to have ownership with, again, one of the great things I learned from Pat was so big on ownership within the team. Now, you had to earn it. You had to prove to her that you were capable of it, and you had to be worthy of it by virtue of your daily performance and your consistency. But if there came a point in time and you were ready for that, she wouldn't hesitate to give some ownership in areas to the team. And I'll tell you right now, I think that's a very powerful tool.
Thank you for checking out today's episode. Please take a moment to subscribe to this podcast, share it with your fellow coaches, and find us on social media for what's coming up next on the JAMODI podcast. It's just a matter of doing it.